Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Grit Talks with Dr. Anand Kulkarni, presented by Wise Woods. I have with me Dr. Pranav Ratnaparkhe, and today we are going to talk about another important theory known as post colonial. There is a beautiful couplet by American poetess Winifred Sackville Stoney Jr. She says, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Some say that that is the beginning of colonization. However, the term post-colonial is referred to by many critics in different light. Some say that it refers to works written during and after the colonial period in various countries, whereas some critics believe that it is referred to works by and about the colonized cultures. So my first question to Dr. Anand Kulkarni will be, what is it that we designate when we refer to a phenomenon known as post-colonial?
Good morning to all of you. Good morning to Dr. Pranav Ratnaparkhe and Professor Ghanesham Borate. Today's topic of our discussion is post-colonialism. And you raised a very basic but very important question about the nature and definition of post-colonialism. I should begin with a word of caution that we have got the habit of understanding everything in definite terms. And that is not where critical inquiry allows you to do so. So the point is that post-colonial theory also cannot be defined in clear terms, though we can have a fairly good understanding of what it really means or what it represents. Post-colonial is, or what you call post-colonialism is a set of inquiries into cultural, political, historical, racial discriminations made by the colonizers over the colonies. That is a very simple way of looking at it. Second thing is, post-colonialism provides a site of resistance. That is, it provides platform from where and on which the post-colonial readers, writers, critics can raise their voice against the empire. So we can say that post-colonialism is a group of discourses analyzing the effects of colonial rule over the colonies. Now, British, that is English, French, and Portuguese could be cited as examples of the colonial rules, and they had their colonies in different parts of the world. The English empire spread all over the world, we all know, historically also. So these are the concerns, political, cultural, social, historical concerns that post-colonial studies is always concerned with. If you insist on narrowing down the focus and want to know in more clear terms, perhaps we can say that post-colonial studies or post-colonialism is an inquiry into is a study of the historical, political, and economic after effects of the colonial rule. That is that simple, I think, if you want to understand it in simple terms. But let me tell you that this understanding of post-colonial and post-colonialism is not as simple as it appears to be. The term post-colonial itself is very contentious. and very argumentative, by which I mean it is very contradictory and controversial, because there has been a debate over the term post-colonial or post-colonialism. There is a hyphenated term called post-colonialism. And then there is a term which is without any hyphen, that is straightway post-colonialism.
Post-colonial.
Yeah. By post-colonialism with hyphen, it is suggested that it is a study about the period after independence, the period after political independence of the ex-colonies. By straightway with no hyphenation, post-colonialism refers to the period before and after, that is past and present, of the colonies, of the ex-colonies. So it is from that itself that it begins. One thing that we have to keep in mind while we try to understand post-colonialism is that it is more or less a political discourse or a group of political discourses. We cannot separate politics, history, and culture from any attempt at knowing post-colonial study. So that is what I think we should try to understand by the term post-colonial and post-colonialism.
Sir, one more term comes in between, or we keep referring to that, and that is Commonwealth. So post-colonial and Commonwealth, what is the relationship? And of course, the next question would be, what are the main issues of post-colonial inquiry, as you just said?
Yeah. Commonwealth and post-colonial are not identical terms in the sense in which we try to understand. Commonwealth literature was supposed to be the literature springing from or coming from the colonies dominated by England in the earlier period. So it to an extent, Commonwealth literature possessed some traces of the colonial rule. It was relatively less autonomous, less independent compared to post-colonial literature. Even though Commonwealth literature was also supposed to be a term which was applied for the literature coming from colonies or ex-colonies. But then you shall see that historically Commonwealth literature was replaced by third world literature, and then it was replaced by post-colonial literature.
Post-colonial.
So there has been an increasing degree of independence and freedom from the colonial effect.
Right.
We will say that Commonwealth literature was an initial attempt on the part of the colonies to write something of their own, something related to their own experiences, even though they were writing under the direct and immediate influence of their colonizers. However, this influence increasingly was given away and given up, and that there was an element of autonomy, an element of self-assertion in the post-colonial period. So from Commonwealth to post-colonial, I think it is a journey from the influence of the colonizers towards the throwing away of the influence and reassertion of the native identities of the concerned colonies. That is how I think we should understand the difference between the two. However, we should never forget that we have still not been able to recover from the after effects of the colonial rule. Take, for example, India, and you will realize this, that we have not been able to recover fully from the colonial effects. Our mindset is still colonial, and we have not been able to reclaim the pre-colonial mindset that we used to have. The reason was, of course, that the post-colonial, somewhere you raised the issue, what are the concerns of post-colonial studies? I think this is one of the concerns, that the colonizers simply did not politically acquire and territorially acquire the colonies. They dominated the cultural practices, the cultures of the colonies, and later on they used the native cultures towards their interests in order to perpetuate their political dominance. They used culture as an instrument to dominate that. So, post-colonial criticism is concerned with this. If you ask me, it is concerned with this. Second, it is concerned with the.
So it's a basically cultural inquiry, sir. That is what you are saying.
Exactly, it is a cultural inquiry that it is concerned with. The second is the inquiry into social and political and economic after effects, that the colonizers left the colonies and the colonies enjoyed the political independence, but then it was simply a political independence, and culturally we were not independent. Even today we are not fully culturally independent. We bear some traces. We have not come out of, or we have not entirely thrown away the colonial habits of thinking. For example, we want to be very systematic, we want to be very logical, we want to be very rational. All these are the Enlightenment side effects, I think.
Yes.
And we have to understand all these things.
Correct.
Indian perspective, for that matter, or ex-colonies perspective was not unfortunately fostered later on, even after political independence. And the reason, of course, is education. Education was, we all know how Machiavelli came out with the missionary target of missionary agenda of civilizing India and in a way dominating India. It was under the pretext of civilizing India that the colonizers tried to draw India out of its cultural ethos. So that is what post-colonial study is concerned with, post-colonial criticism is concerned with. And finally, it also deals with some other issues which have recently sprung up in literary and critical studies, like race and ethnicity and gender and class. These are also some of the important discourses that have become dominant in post-colonial studies. So I think these are the three concerns: the cultural inquiry, other inquiries into the social, political, historical issues, and the racial, ethnic, class-oriented inquiries are some of the sites that post-colonial criticism has dealt with, and dealt in a very sustained way. That is what I think we should know. Yeah.
Sir, taking the earlier reference from your deliberation, that we still haven't come out of that colonial hangover, if you allow me to use that term.
Yeah.
Are there problems or crises of identities?
Surely, especially in a country like India, we have not been able to culturally and politically establish our identity, though we have tried our level best. That is why English has enjoyed such a status in India. The reason being the cultural gap that we have provided to a language like English. Of course, these are the matters of political controversies, political debates, and we all have our own concerns about that. We will not go into that because that will take us away from our focus, point of discussion. Yeah. But then it is to be accepted that literature in India, even in the pre-colonial period, was not entirely free from the political interferences. And that has been the case across the world. That we have to look at literature as a political act at the same time as it is an act in aesthetic construction. This we should not forget, but then we have forgotten all this, and that there has been a dissociation between literature and criticism and the society and the politics in which literature and criticism spring up. So by identities, I mean this, that we should be in search of our identities, and we should try to locate our identities into our roots, into our cultural parlance. We should not dissociate it from the cultures from where we have sprung up. This is what I think. Of course, there have been a lot of revisions over this. For example, a cultural studies pioneer like Stuart Hall comes out with a different version about culture and identity.
Yes.
But then this is a very crucial issue that you have raised. What we have to do with identities. And in a country like India, we have not an identity, we have identities.
Correct.
And that identities are full of politics. And politics is not limited to literature alone. It has its cross references to culture, to religion, to region, to language, and to so many other things. So we have to understand these things as well. Now, what is the take of post-colonial criticism over identity? If you ask me, the answer is that it has dealt with identity differently. And that, I think, is a right way to do that. That you have to understand the differences and that you have to deal with the identities in a country like India, an ex-colony for that matter, in very disparate ways, in very different ways. Any singular monolithic approach would become lopsided. That is, it will be very singular, but it will be very single-sided and exclusive in a way. So the multitudinousness of our identities is something that we have to, the manyness of identities, that we have to keep in mind.
Right.
So I don't think we can have a very fairly definable explanation of identity. You cannot say that this is what an identity is, because once you take the position that this is what identity is, it is both reductive and imposing. That is, you try to reduce the scope of many identities, and at the same time you try to impose your identity on the identities of others.
Yes. Yeah. Correct.
So that is something I think we have to deal with.
Right.
The other thing that we have to keep in mind, I think, is this, that the post-colonial critics have dealt with identities with different perspectives. For example, there is a racial perspective. For example, there is a class perspective. For example, there is gender perspective. For example, there is political perspective. For example, there is historical perspective. These are all perspectives through which they have tried to negotiate with the issue of identity. And I think that will take us a long way to discuss how they have done this.
Yes.
But then they have done. And I agree with your point that post-colonial criticism has difficulties dealing with identities, and therefore has become a cornerstone of their discussion. That is, you cannot know anything about post-colonial criticism without knowing their take on identities. That is what it is all about.
Yes. Yes. Yes, Shyam. Next question, you get.
Sir, who were the chief luminaries of post-colonial theory? If you have to name a few writers and critics who practiced it.
We shall turn towards critics, I think. Writers, we shall discuss some other day. We shall take a few prominent critics and their treatment of post-colonial issues. We should start with Frantz Fanon. Some of you might be knowing that he was an Algerian French critic, a theorist, a psychoanalyst by profession. And he can be credited to be perhaps the first post-colonial critic in the established sense of the term. Fanon wrote two very important books. The next one, I'll not deal with the first one. The next one is The Wretched of the Earth, in which he dealt with the problem of identity. I think earlier we were discussing about that problem of identity. Now, what kind of identity? He applied psychoanalytic model to the black people living in Africa. And then he tried to interpret how there was the process of othering. That is, self and other kind of dichotomy was established. And it was through this dichotomy. Other is the colonized people, and self is the colonizers. That is, those who rule over are the self, and those who are ruled are the other. So this binary between the other and the self was a terminology provided to us by Fanon. So we should give him the credit for providing this concept of otherness, which was later on so seriously and elaborately dealt with by Edward Said. So this otherness is there, and he applied psychoanalytic model to the identity of the black people, through which he tried to interpret how the black people and their identities have been marginalized. They have been underestimated in the name of establishing the greatness of the white people. So it was a racial cum psychoanalytic discourse by Frantz Fanon. And then we have to understand that Fanon was himself a victim of, because he was a French Algerian, and he tried to protest the French colonization. So that was directly drawn from his first-hand experience as a colonized intellectual. So he, for the first time, raised this issue of the identity, the issue of the colonized people and what they think about the colonizers, and what are the possible ways through which we can resist the colonizers. Next, we turn towards Edward Said, of course. And we all know that Said made a pioneering work in post-colonial criticism. Said's very famous book, which has now become a classic of its own kind, Orientalism, through which Said tried to explain to the world, and especially to the West, that it is not that the West, whatever the West has to say about the world is always true and applicable universally, because it is full of politics. The Orient is something which is created and constructed by the Western, by the West. So the West has created certain stereotypes. For example, non-Westerners are immoral people. Non-Westerners are backward people, uncivilized people, undeveloped people, unintellectual people, having no cultural legacy. They don't have any culture. These were some of the stereotypes created by, and very deliberately created by, the Westerners in order to perpetuate their political rule into the colonies. So for the first time, Said came out with an elaborate explanation of the Orient that was imaginatively created, which was very false and fake, not very true. And then he tried to uncover how this was all politically motivated and culturally manipulated by the West. And then Orientalism, another contribution that Orientalism did was this, that it provided with a frame of analysis to all the succeeding critics and students and teachers of post-colonial criticism. So he provided a discourse, a perspective, with the help of which we could better understand what has been done with our culture and with our identity by the Western rule over us, and even after the Westerners left their colonies, what has been going on with our culture and identities. That is the first thing that we can learn from Said. And second, that Said, as I said, provided a framework a methodology with the help of which we can better inquire into the post-colonial, colonial and post-colonial effects.
Yes.
His culture and imperialism later on continued with the same thing, and he dealt more with imperialism and especially cultural imperialism, connecting it with culture and imperialism and economic issues and all that. So together, I think it goes for a wholesale or a comprehensive understanding of the inquiries into the colonial and the post-colonial issues.
Yes.
The next important critic, of course, is Homi Bhabha. Some of you might have learnt about Homi Bhabha and the terms that he made popular. Especially in post-colonial criticism, Homi Bhabha popularized three very important terms. For example, unhomeliness, mimicry, and hybridity. And The Location of Culture was the book that he wrote, which became very popular. Nations and Narratives was another earlier book that he wrote, followed by some other books also. But these were some of the books, especially The Location of Culture, which set the tone of the post-colonial inquiry into the colonial effects from a very different perspective, from a very different point of view. Bhabha was more concerned with cultural identities. That is why he came out with these three terms. Unhomeliness is that we feel home at neither culture.
Right.
That is, we do not feel comfortable with our own culture, our native culture, and not the culture that has dominated over us. That is why the feeling of this, the feeling that you belong to nothing.
Rootlessness.
Yes, the rootlessness, the non-belongingness, that is there in his term called unhomeliness. Mimicry also refers to similar kind of thing, that the colonizers try to imitate the foreign culture, and in doing so, they not only imitate their culture, they also undermine the culture of the colonizers. That is what mimicry is all about. This is a very reductive explanation. I'm sorry for that, but then we don't have time. So in a very short way, we are trying to understand this. And hybridity is, of course, a term which talks about the multiculturality, that we live into a multicultural world, and that you cannot have the terms like purity and origin and universality about culture. It is very close to cultural studies. This term called hybridity is very close to the cultural studies, that we cannot maintain the purity and originality of our culture when we are living into a multicultural setup. So Bhabha concentrated on these terms, I think, and provided a very different and very important perspective to understand colonial and post-colonial scene.
Dear audience, I think it is a time to take a break as far as this episode is concerned, because post-colonial discussion requires more time. We have to discuss a few more critics and few more concepts. Of course, in this episode, we have laid a foundation about what exactly post-colonialism could mean. We also talked about the founding fathers of post-colonialism, the three critics, Frantz Fanon, Edward Said, and of course Homi Bhabha, and their major concepts. Of course, a few more critics like Chakravarti Spivak, or maybe some other critics who have contributed in this field. We must talk about them. Plus, I would like to bring some discussion regarding the different responses by the countries who were colonized, like India, or which are generally called as the third world countries. So what were their responses to post-colonialism? I think we need to discuss that. So for that, we require one more episode. So in this next episode, we will continue our discussion regarding post-colonialism. I thank Dr. Kulkarni for his guidance, for his mentorship to this entire process. And of course, he's a very encouraging participation in this particular episode. I also thank Ghanesham for his active participation and standing by me throughout this journey of Grid Talks. And of course, audience, I cannot thank you enough for your gracious kind of gestures and the way you have endorsed us. So keep watching coming episodes of Grid Talks with Dr. Anil Kulkarni, and let us enjoy this journey where we are enjoying, and with that we are learning something. Thank you so much.